name is Angie Vishyanan, and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal, and we provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring. We started doing these meetups at the beginning of COVID-19 to allow pre-law students, current law students, and young lawyers to all connect with each other and get some tips and advice from practicing lawyers and law school admissions consultants and all sorts of legal professionals so that you guys can get a leg up in your career. So I'm super excited this week to bring in Kyle Newman, and he is a litigator and he does personal injury law and med mal, and I think that he's going to be fantastic to tell you a little bit about his career journey and what the practice in these areas is like. So Kyle, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Angie. So welcome everyone to my pre-law people in law school, or young attorneys out there. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you get some good value out of this. Like Angie was saying, I'm a personal injury and medical malpractice attorney. I represent plaintiffs in serious injury, accidents, and lawsuits. I've been doing this for about 13 years. My office is in the Bronx. I practice with my dad, James, and my younger brother, Devin. So we have a real family practice here. You know, what we do, first of all, it's something that I absolutely love. And I hope that anyone watching this gets a little bit of an idea, if you don't know, about what personal injury attorneys like us actually do. And maybe we'll shatter some false beliefs that you may have, and maybe just open the door for some interest in the profession. Now, to all my law school students or pre-law people out there, first of all, if you're watching this, good for you, because you have an interest in learning about something new or a new part of the law or a different aspect. Maybe you had some idea about, but want to learn a little bit more through stuff like this, which is great during this whole COVID pandemic, because doing webinars, online stuff, you get exposed to so much more, you know, attorneys and different aspects of the law. It's a fantastic thing. But one thing that I would recommend to anyone who's starting out in law is try to, especially when you're in law school, try to work in as many different types of fields or offices or different law firms as you can. I know for myself, I worked for a family law, these two women partners that focus mostly in divorce cases. So that was an experience in itself. I worked for the DA's office. I worked for a law firm that did key tam law, which is whistleblower actions. And then ultimately, I ended up working with my dad, who was a solo practitioner in the Bronx. And I knew once I started that this was, you know, really my passion, my life's work. And I'm very fortunate to do that. But getting that experience and knowing what else is out there and seeing what works, because all of us are different. You're all going to have different traits that help you and that are going to benefit ultimately the clients that you serve, because this whole thing is about clients. If you have clients and you serve them well, you're going to be successful in whatever you do. And personal injury is, you know, one of these wonderful things because it is so personal. It's all about your clients, what they've gone through in their, you know, accidents and their injuries, and how you can help them and better serve the community. So I represent plaintiffs. So plaintiffs are the ones, for those of you who aren't familiar with this yet, plaintiffs are the ones who are bringing the lawsuit, who actually file the action in court against a culpable party. In this case, we're talking about someone who is negligent, or in the case of a medical malpractice case, a doctor or hospital that deviated from an accepted standard of care and caused an injury. Now, plaintiffs, as opposed to defendants, the ones that represent the people who are being sued, plaintiffs have a very different job than defendants in our line of work, because plaintiffs have the burden of proof that we have to prove our cases. Our adversaries, they can sit back during the course of the case and really not have to do anything. Obviously, they don't do that. They litigate cases very well, and there's great attorneys on both sides. But being a plaintiff's attorney, it is your burden to bring your case and to prove your case based on whatever elements that you need to prove in court. So that's one thing, you know, just to keep in mind. Now, as far as personal injury attorneys go, we are not ambulance chasers. That's something that, you know, that's a derogatory term that I can't stand and I hate. And obviously, you know, there's, you know, people in all professions that may not be good or maybe, you know, doing some things that aren't right. But for myself, I take such offense to something like that is because of how much I love our clients and how much, they mean to me and their families, because being a personal injury attorney is personal. You're working with people that, for the most part, I work in the Bronx, which is, a middle to lower class, people that live in our area and people that we serve, a lot of immigrant communities. I have a lot of clients from Jamaica, West Indies, Africa, and it's really personal. You're meeting people in times in their life that are really the lowest points. I mean, people that have suffered horrible accidents, dealing with terrible injuries, really have no experience dealing with anything like this. And their lives are profoundly affected by these cases that we bring because of someone being so badly hurt after something. And, for any of us, if you're in school, if you're working, if you're seriously injured and, you're unable to work or you're unable to provide for your family, that is a profound burden that's placed on that person and their family. So that's where plaintiffs' personal injuries attorneys come in first and foremost, is to help those people get through the initial tough times that they're dealing with so that they can maintain their household, support their families, get the compensation that they need and the support that they need. And that comes from, dealing with, for instance, with car accident cases, making sure they get their lost earnings, or if they're injured on the job, dealing with other types of attorneys that deal with workers' compensation, for instance. But you're really, there to help people really get the justice that they deserve and to be, hopefully at the end of these cases, made whole again. So if you're thinking about getting into this, whole line of practice, I would say one thing. This is a job, and to be successful, to get clients, you really want to be a people person. If you like being around all different types of people, one of the best things that we get to do is we meet every day. It's meeting someone new, or talking to someone that, has a totally different background than you. They may be, working some type of maintenance job or construction worker or in nursing. But I just find that whole aspect of what we do so fascinating. And I love learning about our clients and their backgrounds, which is something that's really valuable during the course of the case, because, it's not just about the accident. It's about understanding what that person's life was like before this, and, how this, this event or this accident has really disrupted their life. So when it comes to personal injury law, really these cases come down to one thing, and that is safety. In our society, everywhere you look, you don't think about it during the course of your normal lives, but there's laws and rules and regulations for really everything to ensure that when we're driving on a road, on the highway, walking down the street, when you get into an elevator, if you're working on a construction site, if you go to see a doctor, that you have an expectation that the people that you're going to come into contact, or the buildings that you go into, the things that you interact with, are going to be upheld to a certain standard. And those are the laws that are there to make sure that we're safe, that people can go about their daily lives and not have to think about the rules of the road, or the what's going on a construction site, or in a building. Those rules are there so that people that are doing certain things can be held to a certain standard. And in personal injury cases, what happens, and the only way that we can bring these cases, if someone violates those rules. For instance, if someone's driving recklessly or makes an improper left turn in front of someone and causes a big collision, or if there's a trucking case where the truck wasn't maintained properly, based on the highway standards, those are reasons why a culpable party, someone that's negligent, that breaches a duty that they have towards someone else, should be held responsible. And that's, there's people out there, and I get this all the time from people. Well, I'm not a lawsuit person. I really don't believe in that sort of thing. I don't really, I'm sure, my partner Matt and my dad and my brother, dealing with jurors, people have a funny feeling about suing someone for money damages. And what I would say to anyone that's skeptical about this is, first of all, most likely nothing even in the ballpark of what we're dealing with in these accident cases has happened to them before. And luckily so. I mean, you would never wish any of this stuff on anyone. But personal injury attorneys like us, we're really, if you think about it, we're an emergency service where people would never think that you need a personal injury attorney for anything when you're going about your normal life. If you're, delivering your child in the hospital, if you're going in for a surgery, if you're taking a drive in your car, you never think about this stuff. It only comes up when someone is, seriously hurt, or they're, impacted by an accident or some type of trauma, where it not only affects their health, but also is going to affect their wallet, their ability to get health care, their lost earnings, so stuff like that. So that's also what I love about this, is that you're getting people, for the most part, that have never had to deal with anything like this. And you're there as a guide, as a real professional to lead them through every step of this process. And it's not just about the lawsuit aspect of it. We were just talking about this, about the fact that personal injury attorneys were really counselors. I mean, attorneys were counselors at law, but we really have to be counselors also in the psychological and emotional sense. Yeah. Oh, okay, just on the way. In that sense, because we have to help usher them through these very, very difficult times. And I'm sorry, I'm at my office right now, so there may be a little bit of interruptions. The client just came in, so he's going to wait till this is done. So. Okay, so these are some of the great things about personal injury that, I hope that you can get from this. And we're going to kind of talk about some great things and some of the things that might not be so great for certain people. And one of those things is how adversarial personal injury and medical malpractice cases are. And what do I mean by this? Every single case, it's us versus them. The plaintiffs versus the defendants. And it's a constant battle between these two sides. And what we like to think is we're on the side of good and justice, but at the same time, our defendants are very skilled attorneys that have a job to do to represent their clients, and they're going to fight us tooth and nail to make sure that our clients don't get the compensation that we are claiming that they deserve, that our clients are not successful in court. And when you're dealing with someone that you've known, in some cases for years, up until from the beginning of their case until the end, you develop a real bond with these people. And, they become more than just a client. Most of our clients are like family to us. We see them all the time. They bring us food. They send us letters. They call us all the time. They refer friends and family to us because we've been through so much together, and really through a really traumatic time in their lives. And hopefully at the end you get to do a lot of good for them. But for myself, I'm a very emotional type person. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I think that's why, in some respect, that I've been successful in this practice, is because when I have a client that I'm representing, they are like family to me, and I do take it personally, their case and what they're going through. So when you have someone else who's telling you, oh, this person isn't hurt, this person isn't sick, they don't deserve this, it's a really personal thing, and it adds to the adversarial nature of this. And Angie touched on this a little, but I've been a trial attorney for about 13 years now. I do all of our trials for my office. I've done about 100 or so, probably more, trials in that time. And when you're getting to trial, which is the climax of these cases, which is the big end result, and there's so much on the line, that adversarial process really comes out during that time, and it can be stressful. I mean, I know there has been countless hours of lost sleep that I've had over my career, staying up late, being stressed out about, what's going to happen the next day. And all I would say to that is, first, be as positive as you can. There's going to be times where you're going to be ripping your hair out and steam's going to be coming out of your ears because of what someone said. But I would say, look, what's right and what's good in your cases, and what the right path is ultimately going to be. That's what's going to be driving you throughout the case, the justice aspect, what's good and what's right in the world. So, if you find yourself in an adversarial position, just try to be bigger than it. Okay. And when you're young, I mean, I'm 37 now, but when I was younger, I really would get, a hot head and get really, intense with my adversaries. It's cooled down a little bit now, but that's one thing to know about this process is that it can be so adversarial. I mean, when you're at trial, maybe the defense, they offer you nothing before the trial starts. And you have a lot on the line. You might have tens of thousands of dollars that are on the line at that trial. And if you lose, you're out of that money. Your firm is out. So there's not only your client, the person that you want to help, but also the financial stuff that you have to think about in these cases as well. One of the great things so just to switch gears a little bit, one of the best things that I love about personal injury and medical malpractice work, especially when you're just starting out, is that you are in court a lot. I mean, every single day for the most part, for the past 12, 13 years, I've been in court every single morning, whether it's there for a conference, whether it's there for trial, mediations, arbitrations, that sort of thing. But you're a real courtroom attorney. Myself, I have a family of lawyers. My dad has been an attorney for over 40 years. My grandfather was a personal injury attorney in Manhattan as well. So I've been around lawyers my entire life. And I think a lot of that mystique about lawyers, especially, you see them in movies and in TV shows and the grandeur of being in a courtroom is really such a special thing. It's something that I just absolutely love and am really infatuated with. I think the whole process is an incredible thing. So being in court a lot, you get to wear a lot of suits, which I also absolutely love, which is a great thing. I think it makes it a little easier to pick your outfits every day, but just know if you're getting into this line of work, you are in court. You're going to be asked to go for conferences, to meet with judges, different lawyers, which if you want to do this type of thing and be a courtroom attorney, in my opinion, there's no better practice on the planet than working in personal injury and medical malpractice because of your exposure to being in court and learning the process and the different procedural things, which is an amazing thing to go through. It's very nerve-wracking when you're young, and it still is. There's certain times I still get nervous when I get into trial, and especially in the beginning. But it's a wild ride, and I really think that for an attorney growing up, going through law school, learning so much, working so hard, it's a great thing to do. And when you're young, I have a unique situation where, I work for my dad and he was throwing me into trials right away. But for the most part, most law firms will send young associates out to court to do depositions, to do maybe smaller trials in the beginning, which is also a great thing. And for anyone who's just starting out, maybe you're a young attorney or you're thinking about law school, this line of work, if you're getting into it, I would say to you, be open to anything. Take any assignment that you have to go to court. If there's a deposition that needs to be done, ask to do it. That's the way that you're going to learn. The only way to learn in this business, I'm convinced, is by doing. There's only so much that you can, read in a textbook. You have to be interacting with other attorneys. Learn to speak like an attorney. Prepare your case. What rules there are in court. And it's going to be different, wherever you are. But the whole courtroom aspect is a phenomenal thing. So if you want to be, a courtroom star, check out personal injury law. So moving on to another thing that I wanted to talk about is medical malpractice. Now, medical malpractice work, Angie talked a little bit about this. I'm a personal injury and medical malpractice attorney, and medical malpractice is really a different ball game than personal injury work is. They both involve people that are significantly injured by an act, and it really boils down to someone being negligent, whether it's a doctor, someone at the hospital, but the medical malpractice work is much more intense and much more involved because first of all, you have to learn the medicine so well to be able to interact and speak with doctors and be able to be effective in court, which for myself is something I never had any medical background, no medical training. I was a criminology and criminal justice major in college. I think I got a C in bio when I was in high school, but it's something that comes second nature to me. I never knew it, but starting out, I was fortunate to get a lot of exposure to it, and it's really become my super specialty, and I absolutely love it. So if you're thinking about doing personal injury or medical malpractice, I would say this: try to work in as many of the medical malpractice cases as possible, because medical malpractice, once you get a real in-depth understanding of medicine and how doctors and hospitals actually work and what is going on, all the different players that are going on in a hospital to work up a patient, whether it's an emergency, a planned surgery, a labor and delivery, you name it, you're going to get such a higher understanding of medicine, which translates so amazingly well into personal injury cases, because we're only talking about injuries and that type of stuff, surgery, all that. So you're able to talk about medicine and interact with expert witnesses, doctors, and talk about, these medical issues so much better because of the understanding you get from med mal. So that's my take on medical malpractice. It is the most adversarial process there is. You're going to be dealing with the best defense attorneys, I'm convinced, in your state or in the country. The defense medical malpractice bar is excellent. You'll be against some amazing attorneys, which is difficult, but at the same time, I've learned probably more from my adversaries going up in court than I had from other plaintiffs' attorneys in the med mal field. So that's something to think about. So another thing too that I just wanted to touch on is that in the field of personal injury and medical malpractice, there's always going to be something new. And we joke about this in my office that PI, personal injury, also stands for private investigator. And that's really what, when you get a new case, you really have to become the investigator of whatever that accident is, or whatever that incident, that occurrence was, because you're taking something that happened in the past and you have to put together all the puzzle pieces to fit and find out what happened. When it comes to a med mal case, you have to recreate and look back to see all the different things that were happening with that patient. If it's a car accident case, you have to see all the different aspects, what the road was like, what the parties were doing, the vehicles that were driven. And same thing with construction accidents. I mean, in a construction accident, there could be 10 different subcontractors on a construction site doing various different things. So as the attorneys, you have a duty to investigate these cases. One, to find out whether it's a case or not, and two, to get as in-depth an understanding as you can about the case initially and how to work that case up through the course of the action, so that you know what types of things to request and discover. You think of attorneys, maybe we're just in offices, or maybe we go to court, but one day it could be interviewing a doctor at his hospital office. Another day it could be doing an on-site inspection of an elevator that collapsed, or going to a construction site. 2 years ago, we had to shut down the I-95 in Connecticut to get a hoist to put us up to look under a bridge that had partially collapsed, and a portion of the bridge had fallen onto a car where my client was driving under. So it's always something new, and that part of the business I just absolutely love. I love dealing with experts who are really the most skilled in whatever little niches they're in, and you really get to learn a lot from them. And every day, it's not just something new, it's something that you're going to learn. One other thing that I would say about plaintiff's personal injury is that, for the most part, as far as the economy goes, recession-ish, this type of law is pretty much, recession proof, because people are still going to have accidents no matter what. Even during the COVID pandemic, people are still out and about doing, fairly normal things, whether it's a little bit slowed down or not. If you have a good client base and you're out there, you're serving your community, you're giving value to the people that are around you, you're going to get clients and you're going to get cases. So that's a really good thing that, thank God, it hasn't really affected us that much. So we're at about 1:30 now. So another thing that I would say is, if you are a people person and you like to, if you're just good interacting with people, I joke that there's a scene in Step Brothers with Will Ferrell where they finally become friends, him and his stepbrother, and they look at each other and they're like, "Did we just become best friends?" And that's kind of how I feel about myself when I interact with people that I'm meeting for the first time. I have one of my unique gifts is unique or not, is that I can kind of find a mutual ground for really most people that I meet, so that I can have them open up to me and that we can kind of find a ground that we can communicate really well with. And that's kind of worked for me. I didn't go to the best law school. I went to a state college. I went to University of Maryland. I never had the best grades. But I think in this line of practice, if you can talk to people like a normal human being, not just like an attorney, you can be extremely effective in what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, as a personal injury attorney, especially as a trial lawyer, you are interacting with jurors who, for the most part, are just normal, everyday people. Many of them might not even have a college education or a high school education. So your job as a trial attorney is to simplify often very complex issues. They could be medical issues, they could be engineering issues, I mean, you name it. But you have to take these issues and simplify them and make them concise and easily understandable and engaging with people. And, fortunately, that's been, something that's kind of come second nature to me. So if you're a people person, I would say this type of practice is totally for you. The other thing that I would say is, especially with the young lawyers, is that, a lot of times when you're coming out of law school, you're going into a new profession, you may think that youth is, and inexperience is a negative. But what I'm going to tell you is that in this line of work, it is a positive. Okay. If you are young and you're energetic and you take your job seriously and you work your ass off, you are going to be successful. And one of the reasons why is that when you're young in this line of work, especially on the plaintiff side, where defense attorneys, for the most part, there's a culture where the partners, the older attorneys, maybe I've tried cases against guys, men and women, 30, 40 years older than me. There's a culture that they are much older on the defense side, and they don't really let their younger associates do trial work or any of the heavy lifting. So when you're working as a plaintiff's attorney and you're young and you know your case and you work your ass off, you're dedicated, you're invested in the case, you are always going to be underestimated when you go into court. Youth, when these older attorneys, when they see you in court, they're going to think, oh, I could get over with this guy, maybe doing 50% the work that I'm used to, or I'm just going to get over on them just because I've been doing this for so long. That is not the case. And it's actually a gift when you're young, because they're never going to see you coming. If you prepare and you learn the tactics and the, how to be effective in court, use youth as your, as a benefit. It's such a great thing. That's what I've always loved about being a young trial lawyer, is because every time I go into court, I'm going up against someone who's got gray hair, who's maybe been doing this forever. And they look at me and they think, this guy doesn't know anything, except when I open my mouth during my opening statement, and their jaw drops because they quickly understand how well I know my case and the law. So youth is always on your side. One of the last things that I would say is the community aspect of personal injury is amazing. The state and local bar associations, especially the state trial lawyers associations, are amazing. And I'm going to use this time to talk about something that I've been working on with my longtime friend and partner in this, business venture, Matt Siegel, is something that we developed. It's called the Trial Lawyers Tribe. You could look us up on social media at Trial Lawyers Tribe. And why we have been working on this, we've been doing this for about a year now, is to give younger attorneys, mostly attorneys that are under 40, skills and training and technology to really enhance and amplify their abilities in court, because we share kind of the same path, Matt and I, being young attorneys. We have very different paths. Matt owns his own practice in New York City, but our love of trial practice and bringing this and teaching the things that we've learned and that we cherish and that maybe other people might have a longer time and more difficult time learning all this stuff, that's really at the core why we created this. So the community aspect is great, especially for younger attorneys. If you're out there, do as much networking, meet with as many people as you can, and really have a presence at whatever your local courthouse is. I work in the Bronx. The Bronx courthouse is like an institution in New York City. We're right down the street from 161st Street. It's on 161st Street, right down the street from Yankee Stadium. So it's an awesome place to practice every day, but it's a real community. That's the same people that are there at the courthouse every day. You're going to see all the judges. You want to be seen so that the next time that you come into court, they're going to say, oh, I saw that young man or that young woman, and the judge might see you. So go to the dinners, make an appearance as much as you can. And I think that that really does go a long way. So, Angie, I don't know if you want to start with Q&A at this point, but I hope you've gotten some value out of this. Check us out at Trial Lawyers Tribe. You can always look me up. You can shoot me an email if you have a question. But I just want to wish all of you good luck, and hopefully we'll have some great personal injury attorneys out there that are going to make a real difference in their communities. So.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah,
Sure.
I want to go ahead and open it up. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or go ahead and just jump on camera and ask away. I've got a few questions for you as well.
Sure.
As I was listening to all of that, I think it's fascinating because it's an area of law, both personal injury and med mal were areas of law that I never thought that I would be interested in when I was going to law school. I actually started going to law school thinking or knowing by then that I wanted to practice trademark and copyright law. And so, but personal injury ended up being one of my first favorite classes in my first year. So my torts professor was fantastic.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, I never thought that this would be an interesting area of law, but it was so interesting to me how you could take these cases and you listen to, things that, like you said, are horrific times in people's lives. And you listen to the way that the attorney was able to advocate for that person and to help that person. And you realize that it is a very, very valuable thing that attorney is doing for that person. And so I'm so happy to hear how passionate you are about this area of law. My question is personal injury and medical malpractice one of those areas where you will mostly find, is it big law that, takes on these clients? Is it boutiques that takes on these clients? Or is it solo practitioners and smaller shops that take on these clients? I think that's one of the things that a lot of law students don't know.
Yeah, so I think for the most part on the defense side, it's going to be more of a big law environment. There's smaller firms on the defense side, but there's a lot more bigger, more corporate style law firms. I would say on the plaintiff side, it really runs the gamut. For the most part, it's in between from the solo practitioners, maybe a handful of attorneys in the practice, to maybe 10 to 20 attorneys at the law firm. So it's definitely a smaller climate. That's why I think for young people getting into this, you really can excel pretty quickly and work your way up. One, if you're able to bring in clients, that's really the key. If you can bring in clients and be successful for them and add to the value of the law firm, I think that you can excel pretty quickly. But you're also going to maybe get more exposure than you might working in big law, because it's going to be, for the most part, a smaller atmosphere. You're going to be getting, sent to court more often. And you can actually be doing stuff like depositions, maybe mediations, arbitrations, or smaller trials, maybe 1 or 2 day trials to get started. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for young attorneys. I know, I was talking about my partner in this, Matt. He started his own practice. Yeah, I told him to. Sorry. That should answer your question.
Well, and the other thing is, I thought it was interesting that you said that you're in court pretty much every day. I think, so both personal injury and med mal are still considered types of civil litigation.
Yes.
IP is also considered civil litigation, but your life as a litigator in, trademark and copyright versus your life as a litigator for personal injury and med mal will be completely different. So if, like Kyle said, you really do like the adversarial back and forth, if you like, really being able to go to court all the time, you'd want to choose an area like personal injury or med mal, because you'd get a lot more courtroom time and a lot more action than you do as say like a civil litigator in another area.
Totally.
So most of the time on the defense side, are you up against insurance companies, or are you up against?
It's all insurance companies. So even with the doctors and the hospitals, they have insurance companies that specialize in that type of field or that practice. But it's all insurance companies that you're dealing with. That's where, for the vast majority, there'll be cases where people are self-insured, but think about it, for car accidents, you have insurance for a reason, for, in the event of car accidents or, stuff like that. But yes, it's always up against insurance companies, which can kind of add to the adversarial nature, because you're not only dealing with attorneys, you're dealing with adjusters. So insurance adjusters are not, for the most part, attorneys. So that can be an interesting mix when you're dealing with them every day as well.
Yeah, and I think that might also account for why you might see more big law lawyers representing the insurance companies,
exactly,
or larger boutiques representing these insurance companies, whereas the plaintiffs will be represented by smaller shops. So I know when you're in law school and you're trying to find summer internships, a lot of times career services offices, depending on what law school you're at, they don't usually have a ton of opportunities where you can work for solos or boutiques or smaller firms. Like usually they always have the big law that comes on campus and does on-campus interviewing. So if somebody's interested in working at a firm like yours once they're in law school, what do you suggest that they do?
So one thing that I would say is a great way to start is find out your local bar association, where that is, give them a call, and they'll likely have a list of a bunch of different law firms, different attorneys who are accepting applicants for interns or for different positions. I would also, if you're really, committed to it, maybe just Google and see what law firms are in your area. Check them out, and then just give them a call as well, or shoot them an email and say, look, I'm interested in this type of work. We're always looking for interns. Internship in this practice is like anything. Maybe not the same level as, a big law internship, that type of thing. But I know that, internships are always happening in these firms, and they're very valuable because you're going to get exposed to a lot of really cool stuff. We had interns, we take them to court with us, have them work on motion practice, really see the inner workings of the law practice. So I think there's definitely opportunity. You just might have to, finagle a little bit more.
Definitely. You can always cold call people,
Totally.
in your area. You never know when they're looking for work. And yeah, it's hard. Doesn't mean that, the first 10 calls you're going to take are going to have any positions. It might be 20, 30, 50 calls, but right. you might run into somebody that way if you're really interested in this area. Let's see here. We've got a question in the chat box. Do you have any advice for even younger pre-law students if they might want to get some experience with firms?
Sure. So what I would say also is right now, because of what's going on with the pandemic, first of all, in New York, the courts for attorneys have not been open since the beginning of this in a very limited way. There's certain essential court functions and the court staff are there. But what I would say is being young is an opportunity to learn. One thing that is huge for this is about technology. Learn as much as you can about things like this that we're doing right now, about video conferencing setups, about using trial technology, that sort of thing. But, there's always opportunities at physical law firms. I think just for this unique situation in our lives, the court, actually going to court, might be down a little bit. The other thing is that the whole virtual court process has been kind of thrust into this arena, which is actually a great thing for personal injury attorneys on my side, because it actually cuts out a lot of the time spent maybe just waiting around in court. Because in reality, when you're going to court every day, it's not always all action. It's a lot of sitting and waiting for something. So in a lot of cases, for like a compliance conference or something, a discovery conference, that can be done just easily over the phone, or by Zoom.
Yeah, and I know here in Texas, some of our courts are actually live streaming on YouTube, so you can actually watch.
Yeah, and I saw in Texas they're doing some virtual trials. They're experimenting with that. I know Texas has a huge personal injury bar, and they have a lot of great attorneys there. Texas, California, Florida, New York, also up in Mass. I mean, and other states. But I know in Texas there's a big personal injury. Also because it's a big state.
Yeah. I always encourage students to go ahead and watch some of these court proceedings so you can actually see what really goes down. I mean, It's a lot different than watching, Suits. It's a lot different than watching a, TV show where it's all been dramatized and you'll probably fall asleep a couple times. But it's really, really good experience to just start seeing what a real court proceeding will even look like. And also to that note, once you get into law school, if you're interested in just learning more about litigation in general, I would highly recommend clerking for a judge.
Yeah.
Because you'll literally be in that courtroom seeing it from the eyes of the judge every single day. And even if you don't think ultimately litigation is going to be where you go, it's extremely helpful to be able to watch that in action.
Absolutely.
And see how other lawyers litigate their cases, how they interact with clients, how they interact with court staff, how they interact with everybody.
Yeah.
And, in my first summer in law school, I had a really hard time trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because it is hard as a 1L to get any sort of substantive experience. There's way less internships for first-year students than there are for second-year students. And so you tend to end up taking whatever you can get.
Sure.
And one of the great experiences that I kind of lucked into was I got to intern for a state court judge for 6 weeks. And even though you might think 6 weeks is really short, I saw so much in those 6 weeks. You get to see, literally every day you get to see lawyers come in and argue their cases. And the beautiful thing about being behind the bench too is that you're not focused in a particular area of law. So, your judge may see all sorts of different types of cases. And so you're not just going to be only looking at, personal injury, or only looking at med mal, or only looking at trademark cases. I think it's also a great way, if you're really not sure what practice area you're interested in, to go clerk for a judge and see a lot of different things.
Yeah, I worked for a family court judge when I was in law school, before I worked for the DA's office, and it was a great experience. I mean, if it wasn't for me, but working in the family court building every day and seeing what people went through and the different struggles and different types of actions, it was a very cool experience. And absolutely, if you can get a government internship where you can work for a judge, work in state or federal court. I did something also where I was able to work at the Eastern District, which was by our law school, in the federal building, which is unbelievable. You get to see what the difference is between federal court and state court, which is, it's amazing. Federal court is an incredible place, and the courtrooms and the buildings are just unbelievable.
A lot of marble and ivory, and it always looks much nicer than the state courts.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, this is all about just getting as much exposure as you can.
Definitely. What were the other experiences that you had, Kyle? You said you were at the DA's office. What was that experience like for you?
That was also great. I did a summer internship there. One of the first things that they took us to the medical examiners to watch an autopsy being done. I'll never forget a girl in our class threw up like projectile vomit. It was crazy. So that was a cool experience. I mean, we got to see, there was a murder trial going on. There was, there was a rape case that I remember that we had worked on, but that was really cool. Working at the DA's office is a very young, you working for the most part with younger attorneys that, and if anyone is thinking about getting into litigation and you have the opportunity to work for the DA for a few years, I would totally jump on that, because you're going to get so much trial experience and courtroom experience. And the DAs that I know that have come out into private practice after get incredible jobs, and they're great attorneys. So court counsel, the DA's office, I worked for like a local, they did like, I would handle like night court traffic tickets that I worked at this place. I'm the type I always love to work. I worked, I was a waiter for, 2 years of law school on top of all this. So I always like working, and, the more exposure you get, the better.
Definitely. Do you have any advice on business development for young lawyers? You said that it comes really naturally to you to talk to a lot of different people. Where can they go to start networking with, other lawyers or potential clients, or what would you suggest for new lawyers?
I would say start at your local courthouse that you're working. Look for the Young Lawyers Associations. That's usually a good place. Social media, stuff right now, different trial lawyers groups, Trial Lawyers Tribe, which we started, is a great place to start. And also the bar associations are usually pretty good. When it comes to the bigger type trial lawyers association and bar associations, you're typically dealing with older attorneys that are running it. So it might be a little bit more difficult to really get in with that crowd. If you're younger, it takes more time, but you're also going to be exposed to some incredible attorneys and learn a lot. I mean, I know just going to certain CLEs with the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, which is, I've been a member since I, began practicing, is an incredible place, and I've learned a lot there as well. So, the young lawyers groups, I think, is a good place to start networking, and just trying to be as active in your community as possible.
Yeah, awesome. And then lastly, can you tell us a little bit about the Trial Lawyers Tribe and what?
Sure. So we started this about 6 months ago. What we're doing now is an online course and a membership program that's not quite ready yet. We're in the process of it because it's going to be detailed, going through skills and technology that we've been using and cultivating for the past 10 years. One of my specialties, and one of the reasons why I've been able to be so successful at a young age, is my use of trial technology. And I feel especially it's like my one great love in this is that using trial technology, and what I mean is being able to take your evidence and use it and project it into court using a projector and a screen and certain trial programs that I use. One that I use is called Exhibit View, which I was fortunate to learn about 10 years ago, which totally changed my life and my practice. I'm actually doing tomorrow a webinar with Exhibit View to demo their product because it works so well in the virtual setting. When you're a young attorney, especially now, this is the time to learn this stuff, because if you learn about trial technology, for instance, with Exhibit View, you check it out, you get to learn it, you can bring that with you to a new law firm or a new practice and really enhance their overall practice, especially because older attorneys might not use this stuff. In my experience, I have never gone up against an attorney that's used that program, and it's been so essential in my success over the years. And now, because of people's use of their phones and their diminished attention spans, you really have to be able to wow your juries and keep them engaged when they're in court and on trial. So that's really what I love. Trial tech has been huge for me, and I would say anyone that's trying to get into trial practice needs to learn that right now, and you're going to get ahead.
Awesome. Well, Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Angie.
I really appreciate you being here and sharing all of this knowledge about personal injury and med mal with these students. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
And really looking forward to seeing Trial Lawyers Tribe when you debut. So please keep us apprised. And
Cool.
yeah, we have another 2 meetups next week. So I hope to see you guys back here next week. And also next week is our virtual happy hour. So Kyle, we have a virtual happy hour for lawyers, pre-law students, and current law students every other Friday. So if you want to come hang out with us again,
Sure.
come see us.
Great. All right, Angie, thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone. Bye.